Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio hour and podcast. I'm your host, life coach Myrna Young, and I have an exciting show for you today. We are going to be talking on the topic of fatherhood, specifically Black fathers. And in the guest chair today is Dr. Carl Stokes Jr. Carl is an author, keynote speaker, professor, and social worker, and also the author of a brand new book, which we will be discussing today. So, welcome, Carl.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. All right. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about fatherhood and the issue of Black fathers, because in the Black community, we have um, uh, the tag of that Black fathers is usually absentee, and it's also, when you hear the stars or the football players or the whatever, they're always talking about their moms and there's no dad. So yeah, the fact that Carl decided to write his book, and he also does mentoring to Black fathers, it is a topic that we need to talk about. It is something that the Black community needs to get better at. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and so that we can, Carl can share his knowledge on helping, for us to get rid of that myth. So let me give you some more information on Carl. Carl Stokes Jr. is an award-winning social worker, educator, speaker, and author of the book, Reclaim Your Visibility, a straightforward guide for Black fathers to improve themselves and the relationship with their children. He works as a college instructor and recently received his doctorate in education. His dissertation focuses on Black males and their perseverance in community colleges. Carl is passionate about working to uplift the Black community. He especially loves mentoring young Black fathers and helping them to see their full potential. He also enjoys teaching parenting classes for a small nonprofit organization. On his day off, you can find Carl biking with his wife and daughters or teaching his pet bird, Mango, a new word.
Yo,
You have to put that in there, right? Your pet
I,
bird, Mango.
I had to also because sometimes when Mango hears me talk, she wants to come and join. So hopefully she'll stay quiet for this interview.
That's all right. So if we hear the bird quacking in the background or talking in the background, we know that it's Mango. We'll say hi.
Of course.
That's nice. All right. So that's a nice bio, Carl. So as a Black man, tell us your story of your relationship with your father and your current relationships with your daughter. I'm curious to know because a lot of times we work on areas that, we've been in. So are you one of the men that grew up without a father? And why did you find the importance of this topic?
Okay, so that's a great question. Now, what's interesting is that my answer is both. I grew up with a father and without a father, and I'll explain.
Yeah.
So my dad was in the home until I was about 10 or 11 years old. Unfortunately, though, during that time, he had fell victim to the crack epidemic in the 80s. So my dad was in a home, but life was very difficult during that time, because of what he was going through. However, he still was in the home, so there still was benefits of his presence. You understand? But things got really bad to the point where we were basically forced out. So what actually happened was members of our church contacted my mother and told her that word on the street was that my father was in a very bad place and he was looking to quote unquote sell her for drugs. So when the church members told my mother that, they said either you take the boys and leave or we're going to call child protection. So we had to leave. So from the time I was about 11, there was no more father in the home after that. So I went through that whole period of teenage years and everything without that guidance.
Yeah.
And so I as an adult, I can see that difference between,
Right.
even though he wasn't at his best when he was there, him being there versus not being there, two completely different situations. You know what I mean? So fortunately, I mean, we had a long absence, but he did go away because I'm in Buffalo, New York. So he had to get out of our area, our neighborhood, and get himself together and
Hmm.
get clean. And he came back later on, and he was a great grandfather.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was really interesting. Yeah.
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 So what he wasn't on crack anymore, even though you're never really not a crack addict. It's always there, right? But he was able to clean himself up and come back. And when did he come back? You said grandfather, so that means
Yes.
you were quite old.
I was definitely grown man status about time we got back together. So
Wow. Okay.
yes.
So between the ages of 0 and 10, when your dad was there, but he couldn't be a father because he was under the influence of a substance.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that the fact that his presence was in the home, it had some positive effect on you. Explain that.
Absolutely. Okay. So uh discipline wise, teaching me how to protect, take care of, my mother because he was gone a lot, right? But he would have
Wow.
conversations with me,
Okay.
and having a man to talk to when I would started liking girls and all those kinds of things. He was there for that.
Okay.
His issues caused him to be out a lot and a lot of overnights out in the
Right.
streets or whatever he was doing. But
Right.
when he was in that house, it was a benefit to me and my younger brother. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's why even though it wasn't great, the time that he was there was definitely beneficial.
Well, that's good. I want to ask the question
Sure.
because I'm thinking it.
Mhm.
So, what you're saying that, you know, some people that are listening, fathers decide to stay because the marriage is bad, or they try to stay for the kids. So, what you're saying is that the kids do benefit, even if the marital relationship is strained, because I'm pretty sure your mom wasn't down with that.
Yeah, right. Very true. That's a nice way to put it. She definitely wasn't down with that.
Right, 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 right.
Right. She definitely wasn't down with that. But to answer your question, I do see benefits. However, if it gets to the point where it doesn't outweigh the negatives, that's
Right.
something different. Because while I can sit here and say that I did get lessons from having that male presence in the house, I can also say I also experienced domestic violence. I also experienced theft. I also experienced, run-ins with the police and the, people from the street and all of that. So I wouldn't say stick it out
For the kids.
regardless. You
Right,
know what I mean? Because I just as easily could have went the other way. I
right.
was just fortunate enough to kind of take
That you
the
didn't.
more positive path. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. It's
Yeah.
awesome. So let's transition to your relationship with your daughters.
Okay.
You have three daughters,
I do.
and how do you parent them, knowing that you didn't have a father since you were 10 years old?
Okay. So this is where it gets a little bit interesting, sort of complicated, because I became a father at 17 years old. I
Okay.
was in high school. I was a senior in high school. I actually had my little baby in my graduation picture, and and I,
Sounds like you were around though. You didn't
I
disappear.
I was,
That's
and
right.
I made it a point to be that way because I
Okay.
knew what it was like
Right.
to not have that presence.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, because I was so young, because I didn't have the guidance, um, and I was immature. Unfortunately, I ended up not handling my business as a father the way I should have. There was a few instances that took place. For example, my daughter's mother decided to move actually to Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And I didn't know I had rights. I didn't know that I didn't have to allow her to take her without, working out any arrangements, little things like that. And it caused separation and damage in the relationship between me and my first daughter.
Your daughter,
So
right?
yes. So the book is essentially about that. And we'll get into that later. But
Mm-hmm.
what I did was I had to grow up. And when I got more mature and I met somebody and got married and started to have children, to my other two daughters, there was nothing going to stop me from doing what I needed to do 100%.
Okay.
So fatherhood became my absolute priority,
That's good.
at that time. Yes.
Okay. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's a great story. And hey, don't beat yourself up. I don't think you are, but don't beat yourself up. When you're young, you do a lot of things, and women, a lot of times they're very vindictive to fathers, and they stop the father from seeing the children if they're not together. All these things are part of of our culture and things that people do, and yeah, so I understand that. So
Yeah.
now, let's get into your book and your research. I wanted to find out, because you did a thesis on this, your research. Why
Yeah.
is it that traditionally Black fathers have been absent? So now we know we've got the crack epidemic. We know we've got prison. We know we've got whatever. But even
Mhm.
when none of those things are going on, they still don't make it a priority. Why do you think that?
Okay. So I think that we have allowed labels and stereotypes to dictate our behavior. Okay. A lot of people might not like what I'm saying, but I firmly believe that we've kind of accepted the idea that in our community, single moms is almost the norm in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
That, the moms do the running around, the moms do the parent teacher conferences, the mom makes sure everything is everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Which it is in a lot of cases, but I think that's because too many of us just accept that for what it is. And it doesn't have to be that way. So for example, we have a stereotype like, all men are dogs, right? And sometimes we just accept it and say, well, that's true. They're going to do what they're going to do. So if we
Well,
look at
that's
you
a
laughing, I say,
different topic.
we do that. That's my next book. So
Yeah, that's a different topic. Yes.
right.
Right.
So, but
Yes.
I think in a very similar way, we kind of lower our own expectations as dads sometimes. You know what I mean? I know I certainly did. So when I wrote the book, I wrote it to myself 20 years ago.
Ah,
And that's kind of how that got laid out. But I think that we don't embrace it all the time the way we should, right? Like I said,
okay.
even with myself, it didn't become an absolute priority to me until much later. And I think because I had a child very young, and because I had very little guidance, it all contributed to those things. And then you put the other things in a mix, like you mentioned, incarceration. A lot of us are not even able to be here.
Right.
A lot of times we're dealing with impoverished conditions, and we all know that a lot of relationship struggle comes from finances.
Yeah.
So if there's a racial wealth gap between us and other groups of people, and we're prone to being in impoverished conditions, it causes extra stress and strain on the relationships. And I think that we don't always know how to get through those relationship issues as Black people, because I never seen it growing up.
Yeah.
I never seen a mother and a father getting along. I remember when I started to have friends. I went to like a predominantly white school, and I would have like white friends, and they would invite me over, and like the mom and dad got along, and they had like dinner time and they had like food in the refrigerator and
Yeah,
lights and gas. And I couldn't understand
that is
what
so
was going
sad.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I
so
think
sad, right?
that's it kind of
Yeah,
perpetuates itself sometimes. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
So I think it's a plethora of things that contribute to that.
right.
And the idea of what I'm trying to do is call attention to it and kind of just say, hey guys, black men, we don't have to settle for that, you
Yeah,
know? And that's really the idea.
yeah, 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 yeah. That is good though, because it is actually hurting our community. Because, like you just said, a mother and a father, even if they're sleeping in separate bedrooms or they're not, maybe the marriage is, broken down or something. But you know what they do? They make their kids their priority. They look after the kids. The father's doing this, the mother's doing this, and the kids are their priority. And because the kids grew up in that kind of environment, it is better for them. You know what I mean? Everything is better. Maybe they get a better education, maybe they excel in sports. And then when they're themselves married, they have a blueprint in order to follow. But like what you're saying, you know, whenever I come in these shows, I always bring in my personal reading or whatever. I actually just started today, this morning, listening to Mike Tyson's book. And if you want to hear about a messed up family with role models and
Yeah,
the stuff that he lived through, from 7 years old. I mean, how can you have a relationship as a dad and a relationship as a husband when that is all you know? You know what I mean?
that's right.
So yes, it is important for us to get that right. It's important for, and you should, you're talking to the black fathers, but I think that the black mothers also help that situation by spiting the man, by not letting him see his kids when they break up. There's a whole plethora of um uh, of contributing factors. That's the word, to
Yeah.
this epidemic. And so yeah, I'm glad that you are highlighting it and we're highlighting it on a market where it's predominantly black. So that's great. So
Yeah.
now my question here is, why did you write the book? You mentioned a little bit ago that you wrote the book to your 17-year-old self, the,
Yeah.
the 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 black father that you were at 17. So,
Yeah.
but you can expand on that. So, why did you write the book, Reclaim Your Visibility? I mean, I'm not, you can probably explain that,
Mhm.
that intro. Explain
Yeah.
Your Visibility, a straightforward guide for black men to improve themselves and their relationship with their children.
Okay. So I wrote the book simply because of this. I got it wrong for many years, and I want to assist in the idea of people not having to go through it.
Mhm.
Learn from my mistakes. Okay.
Okay.
My daughter, my older daughter, my eldest daughter and I have had a rocky, very rocky path. And I don't want that to go in vain because it's all said and done. Um, let's use it to try to prevent it from happening to other black father child relationships.
Okay.
That's really why I wrote it, because if I had it years ago, it would have been very helpful. Not to say that everything would have been perfect, but at least I would have it was known things. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we don't have father figures, sometimes we don't have mentors and things like that, and we don't have the guidance. I tell people in the book, this is what I did, and this was a bad move,
Right.
right? If I would have had somebody to tell me that, I would have probably refrained from making some of those bad moves. You
Right.
understand what I'm saying? So my contribution to, like, I don't want to just talk about the plight of black fatherhood. I want to do something about it, and that's really why I wrote the book. And like I said, um, I'm new to social media. I'm new to all of these things, and
Mhm.
this is just the price I have to pay to get my message out. It's my
Right.
sacrifice because it's so important. And if I can help one father, have a better relationship with their child or children, then it's totally worth it. Totally worth it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And I'm glad you called it a guide, a straightforward guide. So a guide is like a blueprint. A guide is, helping you. It's like when you also a mentor. So a
Yes.
guide is somebody that, yeah, that can say, if A happens, then you do B. You know what I mean? Or something like that. So that is great. Now, what makes your book different from all the other fatherhood books? I mean, I'm not sure if there's Black father books but I'm pretty sure there's a lot
There
of
are.
fatherhood books around. What makes your book different?
So what makes my book different is that I am not the old wise man on top of the mountain talking to the village. The reason why this book is different, okay, and I haven't really told anybody this yet, but I literally started to repair my relationship with my daughter this past summer. Okay. So this is happening in real
Before the
time.
book came out or after?
Before the book came out.
Okay.
So the book came out officially December 1st, and I'm gonna explain to you how that happened.
Okay.
When I finally got in contact with my daughter again after many years, we talked. We sat down and talked face to face for the first time. We talked like 5 hours. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's
And
good.
absolutely. And one of the things she asked me that she remembered from when she was younger was, Dad, did you ever write that book? And I said, no, I didn't. And she said, why not? I said, well, how would it look for me to write a book on Black fatherhood and I'm not talking to my child? And I was worried about, what if you're with your friends or your family and you walk into this bookstore and you see a book with your father's face plastered on it, talking about how to be a father. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I asked her if I had her permission to
Tell
release
the
the book.
story. Okay.
And she said yes. And I said, say no more. It'll be out before the year's out. And that's what happened. So what's different about this book is that this is right now. This is I want people to understand this process. So yes, I'm on an upswing right now, but I'm with them. I'm with you. If you're listening, I'm with you. You know what I mean? So that's what it is.
Okay. So a lot of fathers were absentee fathers. Well, that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about. Um, so do you think that they can make up for that?
Absolutely. I did it.
Okay. All right. Your daughter forgave you?
Once things are done, we can't always take it back.
Right.
We have to learn from these mistakes and move on. Okay. And that is the basis of the book. That's why it's called A Straightforward Guide for Black Fathers to Improve Themselves and their relationships with their children. Because a lot of time we need healing ourselves before we can start going on and try to do other things. So yeah, a lot of us have made mistakes. A lot of us didn't know things, and we kind of learn as we go type of thing. But you can absolutely come back, right? Even listen, at some point your kid is gonna get older and more mature and gonna want to know what happened, right? Was it me? Was it you? What were you going through? Right? We can always redeem ourselves, right? And that's absolutely true. Absolutely.
That's a good message because, any absentee fathers that, that don't want to make that first move and hearing this, they can hear that, yeah, it's time for you to try to repair the damage. Even if you're not accepted, it's very, very important for your kid to know that you love them and that what happened was maybe you were going through something at the time, you and the mother was going through something at the time, but it's very important for you to give that message, even if it's not received. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. So you did a doctoral thesis and
Yes.
research about in your bio, you said it was, Black men in colleges,
Yes.
but is it anything to do with fatherhood as well? So
Absolutely.
talk about that. Okay.
The dissertation is actually on Black student fathers and their
Ah,
persistence and
okay.
perseverance in community colleges.
Okay.
So again, so I was in that population. I was a community college student with a child,
Ah,
and a lot of times at these schools, there's programs for mothers, for students who are mothers, but you
Yeah.
don't really see programs for, fathers, student fathers. So during that process of my research, and doing, reviewing tons and tons of literature, one thing stood out, and it was no mention of fathers other than alluding to the fact that they're not around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They would talk to Black students in colleges and say, who was your support? It was like, it's always mom or grandma.
Mhm.
You
Right.
understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So I said, I want to do something different, and I want to focus on this very specific population, Black student fathers in community college settings. And that's how that came about, and that was my focus.
Okay. So you include that in your book?
About the dissertation?
Right. I mean,
Yeah,
about
I
the
mentioned.
Black student fathers. Did you touch
Oh
on that
yeah,
in your book? Right.
yeah. I mentioned the research and reclaim your visibility. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Awesome. All right. So you also have a media a company that is, dedicated to this issue. So
yes.
can you tell us a little bit about Stokes Media LLC and what you guys do there? I mean, you can.
Right.
I know you mentor as well.
Yes. So Stokes Media, I made it broad, as in, the media piece, just because I'm doing several things. This is first of all, it's my official company for when I do speaking engagements
Mhm.
and seminars, conferences, trainings, and things like that. And the mentoring. The other side of it is publishing. So my books are self-published, and I am also assisting other people to help get their stories out and become published authors as well. So the whole Stokes Media concept kind of embodies all of those things.
Oh, that's pretty good. So,
Yeah.
um, uh, that's great. So you're speaking
Hmm.
and you're writing books, and you're helping other people publish their books too. That's
Yes.
really great. Right. So tell our listeners and those watching on YouTube how to contact you about, tell them more how they can get a hold of you with the Stokes Media,
Hmm.
and if they want. So before we do that, though, what kind of books do you publish? Any book, or are you specifically you have a certain genre that you publish in?
I don't really have a certain genre at this point. People who I'm working with now, they have self-help books, they have autobiographies, children's books, and things like that. So I probably will make the call if I get something a little bit too controversial for me, whatever like that. I'm not going to publish the KKK members book on his
Right.
thoughts and feelings.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
right,
So,
right. Mhm.
but in general, it's pretty open. As long as we mesh well and things like that, I don't really have a problem with that.
Okay, so that's great. So how can our our listeners and those watching on YouTube get in contact with you if they want to, let their stories be heard, which is really good, because we all have stories and I love
Yeah.
stories. What is your process for maybe helping somebody to put their book together, and where they can go to reach you to do that?
Okay, so the easiest way is to go directly to my website, drcarlstokesjr.com. On that website, you can go right to the contact page and fill out the inquiry form, and you can ask questions, leave comments, feedback, whatever you want to do. But that is the best way to get a hold of me.
All right. So, um, uh, walk me through. Someone's listening right now.
Sure.
They have a story.
Hmm.
Maybe they were abused as a child and now they're doing good, or a story that they want to be heard. Like I said, like Mike Tyson's story, for instance. What an
Yes.
amazing story! So they want, so they would come through to your website
Hmm.
and walk us through just an inquiry, or
Yeah.
how does it work?
You can literally, once you go to the home page, you can literally hit contact me. And
Right?
once you hit contact me, put your information, your name, your email, what your question or concern is, and I'll get back to you. And
Okay.
we'll set up a consultation and work it out.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So you set up an interview, and that's
Yep.
how you go ahead. All right. And of course, the same way would be for if they want mentoring, or you talked about you mentor at a nonprofit organization. You want to talk about that?
Yes, I actually do parenting classes for an agency here in Buffalo called the Family Help Center. So
Okay.
when parents are looking for assistance, well, there's two things. First, there's self-referrals, so parents who just want to learn and get some guidance and help. And then there's the court mandated parents who may have issues with child protection or family court, and
Mm-hmm.
then they need to be referred through the court system to do it that way. But I do that there, and I absolutely love it. And I can kind of do both. I can kind of do the curriculum stuff, and I can kind of do the real life stuff. You know what I mean? So that really works well.
So when you do the printing classes, can you walk us through some of your subjects or the things that you talk about in printing classes? I mean, in this
Sure.
conversation, we've been focusing on Black fathers,
Yes,
but you've got any information for Black mothers or any parenting
absolutely,
advice that you feel that is pertinent to our conversation?
absolutely. And I would say the number one thing is co-parenting,
Mm,
right? Co-parenting. I don't care if y'all don't get along. I don't care if y'all broke up because he was doing this. I don't care if you were doing that. What's important is the child or are the children. Okay, so we have to learn to get along for the sake of the children, be fair to each other for the sake of the children. The children are witnessing and understanding these arguments, these disagreements, these accusations and things like that. We tend to think that the kids are stupid and they're not listening to anything. They're taking in everything. They're taking in how you feel. They're taking in the energy that you're putting out. They are internalizing the things that they're hearing, right? So co-parenting is key, especially in our community. We have to get that fixed.
yeah, yeah. It's very important, you know. My son and his wife right now are going through, therapy for co-parenting,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the word because they've got to understand how to co-parent even if they're not together. So that's a big word. Anything else? Parents that are together. Do you have any advice for parents that are not that are together that will help them to be better parents?
Yes, I understand that we live in a hectic time. I understand we have to work, we're busy, we have schedules. What I would say to you is let's try to balance, and limit our time on social media, our time on the computers and the tablets and the devices, and do more hands-on quality time together as a family. Those are the things that the children are going to remember coming up. They're not going to remember you sitting in the other room watching YouTube videos. Okay, they're going to remember the conversations. They're going to remember the laugh and the joke and the games, the board games, whatever you want to do, but do it as a family, right? Make sure we take the time to do those things.
Yeah, very good advice. Awesome. All right. Well, let's talk about your book,
Okay.
Reclaim Your Visibility: A Straightforward Guides for Black Fathers to Improve Themselves. I'm glad that you highlighted that and the relationship with their children. How
Sure.
can the listeners and those watching in YouTube get a copy of it? Um, and what is the message that you want them to take away with when they close the book and put it down? What is the predominant message of the book? I know why you wrote it, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're the subject matter, but what do you want them to walk away with after they've finished the final chapter? So it's a
If I
two-part question.
Yeah, if I had to break it down into one main theme, I would say I would want my Black fathers to understand how important we are to the situation. Okay, as a foundation of the family, to
Yes.
us being better as a community as a whole. We
Yeah.
are so valuable. We are so important, right? We have to take care of ourselves. We have to get over this idea of stepping back or I can't deal with this. We have to understand how meaningful it is for us to be around and holding down our families. We hold down our households. Our households work together to hold down our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods hold it down together to hold down our communities, and it spreads on like that. We don't need to worry about or hope for everybody else to do this for us. We can do it ourselves, but it starts with us in the house. Or not necessarily even if you don't live in the house. I'm just saying the involvement, the presence, right? Because not everybody's going to be together, but that's why we talk about co-parenting. Our presence is so valuable. We have to make sure that we handle our position.
Yeah, yeah. And where can they get the book?
Okay, so you can get the book on Amazon. You can get the Kindle on Amazon. If you want a signed copy, you can get it from me directly at drcarlstokesjr.com. And I also have an audio book because I know we're busy. I did this intentionally. I know we're busy. I know a lot of people ain't got time to be reading a book. I made the book. The book is very, very short in terms of easiness to read. It's only 128 pages. I did it intentionally for you to knock it down. All right. And I also, for your listeners, what I did was right before I got on with you, I created a discount code for the audiobook. So
Okay.
if anybody wants the audiobook, go to my site, drcarlstokesjr.com, order the audiobook, and there's a free sample on there also. And you can enter the code Stay Visible 2021, and you'll get 25% off the audiobook. And you can download it to your podcast apps and listen to it on your way to work and whatever you need to do.
Awesome. Awesome. Stay Visible 2021.
That's correct.
Nice. So now I understand the visible part, being present, visible
Yeah,
to your kids.
yeah, that's right.
All right. I just got that,
Right.
so that was great. Listen, we started off with a powerful comment about the fact of your personal journey. You can't teach anything that you don't go through. You've got to live it first. And what you said about your father being there the first 10 years of your life, his physical presence, his visibility to you was important, and it had a bearing on how you turned out in life. You know what I mean? Sure, you could have gone the other way because a lot of times it's who we hook up with as a teenager that actually, shapes our path. But
Yes.
the foundation that you had, the fact that you can talk to him, the fact that he was there, and he had I mean, if he was, addicted to drugs, when he was off the drugs, well, not, yeah, when he was not taking it, the person he is was still there. So
Yes.
there was a great visibility. So I like what you ended with is that, yeah, the Black fathers are important. They're so important. These kids that grow up, and a lot of them um uh, make something of their lives. A
Yes.
lot of them, you're hearing them being interviewed, and they're millionaires because they made it to the NFL, they made it to football, they made it as a movie star, they made it financially, but they're still broken people because the relationship with their dad was not there. The moms pick up the pieces, but you do need a dad. You know what I mean? It's very important, especially to boys. They
Yes.
need they need a dad. So I'm glad that we were able to highlight this. I'm glad that you were able to show that being visible is important, and there's also a guide to working out the problems, because we've got to remember that the dads are not visible because they have relationship issues with the mom. They have, you're right, they're incarcerated or doing drugs, or you know they don't run off when there's roses and sunshine. There's a reason. So a guide that says, hey, you know what, if you have this situation, then you can work with it like this way. I like what you said in the beginning as well, that you were 17, you had your first daughter, the mom got up and moved to a new city, and that broke your relationship. But hey, that happens all the time. People move to a new country.
Yeah.
I moved from Canada with my daughter when I got divorced, and came to Florida. So you have to be able to traverse all kind of terrain. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And still keep a relationship. Phone calls, summer visits, and all those different things still keep you visible and let your kid know that you love them, because it's very important. So I want to thank you, Carl, for coming on, sharing your heart, sharing your message. What my my audience. I'm sure that the message was well heard and well received, because it's saying that um, the Black fathers are important to the community. Any father is important to the community, but we're concentrating on our community, because our community is, like you said, you go to your friend's house and they've got a mom and a dad and food in the kitchen, and everybody is getting along.
Right.
They're not outside throwing things at each other and having the police come by and all that,
Right.
which is the lifestyle, or of some of our children. So thank you for coming on and sharing your message. I definitely appreciate it, especially to my Atlanta audience. Hopefully your daughter can listen as well.
Yeah, the A. Oh
That's
man.
nice. All right. So as we wrap up, just want to let you know that a transcript of my conversation with Dr. Carl would be on my blog, which is blog.myhelps.us. I will also have links to his website, which is drcarlstokesjr.com. I would have links to, and I would also have the coupon code that he mentioned, which is
Great.
Stay Visible 2021. You get 25% off the audiobook. I would also have that on blog.myhelps.us. I want to encourage you guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, to please subscribe. We're trying to grow our channel, because it's much more, it's exciting to actually see the person that I'm interviewing. So if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, so you'll be able to get the new videos as they come out every week. If you're listening in the radio and you want to be able to hear the podcast another time other than the radio broadcast, I encourage you to subscribe to any of the 11 podcast players that the show airs on. And if you're on iTunes, please rate and review, because that allows us to grow our audience as well. I also have a Facebook group that it's a life coaching group. So I invite you guys all to join. I have hundreds of coaches on the group, and we give inspirational messages throughout the week. And of course, I share content from the show as well, because this is all about life coaching. We're trying to help you to transform your mind so that you can transform your life. So, yeah. So, Carl, it was a pleasure. As we wrap up, do you have any last words?
No, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you and your audience, and I'm gonna get the word out up here in New York for you. So
Yes, 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 yes. I didn't mention it, but I'm from Toronto. So I've been to
okay,
Buffalo a few times.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, yes. It was my old stomping ground, especially when I wanted to go shopping in the old
yeah.
days.
You right. I hear you. That's what a lot of people do. Yeah,
We always coming across the border there to get the cheap stuff.
yeah. You go to the
That's,
outlet and all of that.
that's right,
Yeah,
right, exactly.
I know.
That's what I did.
Yeah. Excellent, excellent.
All right. Well, listen, thank you. And until next time, namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.